The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Dennis Caye here with Belize Islands Real Estate, coming to you live on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. It is 1 o'clock p.m. Let's see, what is Eastern Standard Time, and I'm coming to you live this February 1st. So welcome. Just to give me a chance to take care of a few technical issues before we get rocking and rolling. If you would, please type in the question box or in the chat box if you can hear my voice okay, if I'm coming through loud and clear, if there's any weird echoes or noises going on. And if you see my opening screen, which shows a picture of myself, my name, a couple of the TV shows I've been on, and so forth. So if you would, just type in yes if you can hear me okay. That way I can know that everyone's seeing me and hearing me loud and clear. All right, very good. Thank you very much. Well, it is 1 o'clock on the dot, so let's just give all of our attendees another minute or two to log in. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different because I've created this particular webisode to answer many of the questions you've been sending me over the past 4 or 5 days. And I'm going to get to as many questions as possible in this live event. And those that I don't, I apologize, and I will follow up with you personally on a one-on-one basis. So thank you very much for attending. I promise today is going to be very educational. It's going to be worth your while. And at the end of it, I think you're going to feel like you've spent 1 hour well spent as far as your education on Belize goes. So before I get into it properly, just let me select my opening poll. And I do this to so I know how to tailor my information. So on your screen, you should see a question: why are you attending this webinar today? And if you would, just click one of the boxes. If you are just curious about Belize and want to learn more, looking to own and buy a vacation property, retire in Belize, or want to invest in Belize real estate, please just go ahead and check one of those. That way, next time I do one of these live events, I can tailor the information to your specific needs. So if you would, just do me a favor, vote, and then I'll close the poll out. And I'll share that with you because I think it's kind of exciting to share it with all the attendees, what your other attendees are thinking about and why they're attending today. So let's see, I'll give it another 10 seconds just so the voting can come to a slow, and there we go. Close the poll, share the results. So here we go. So you got about 14% of you just being curious. That's fine. We like having you on board today. 21% are looking to own a vacation property. 57% are looking to retire in Belize. And then you have 7% looking to invest in Belize real estate. Very good. Well, I appreciate it. Well, let's get going. So I am Dennis Caye. My wife and I, my wife's name is Stephanie, we moved to Belize in 2003, and I have had extensive experience living and working in Belize, both on the mainland and on the islands, both on Caye Caulker and Ambergris Caye. So I can talk from firsthand experience about a lot of the things we're going to cover today. I've had the privilege of working with House Hunters International, shooting an episode for them with a lady from Calgary, Canada, who ended up buying a beautiful beachfront condo. That was a really fun episode. Also, I've been on a couple episodes of a show called Live Here, Buy This, where I show real estate properties and resorts all over the island and on the mainland of Belize, including the jungles in the Caye district. So it was really fun working with these guys, and it sort of gave me my 17 minutes of fame and really helped boost my real estate career in Belize. So very, very thankful for that. And in this episode, I have a couple main goals. First of all, I want to tell you what it's like living in Belize from an expat's perspective. So as an American, moving out of the United States, leaving the country, going living somewhere else, I want to tell you what the pros and cons were, what my experience was, what I liked, what I didn't like, both from living on the mainland and living on the islands. And then I'm going to talk to you what the difference is between short-term living in Belize. So if you're a snowbird and you want to spend your retirement sort of half in Belize, half in North America, or if you want to move to Belize permanently, some of the benefits, some of the pros and cons of doing that. And then finally, give you a couple Belize real estate deals to think about that might be able to fund your lifestyle, depending on why you're looking at Belize in the first place. So just very briefly, our story: we had a beautiful life, both born and raised in Michigan, United States, and both had very successful jobs, careers. We had the boat, the house on the water, the cars in the driveway. And we got to the point where we were looking to make a serious change. We wanted to explore the world. We had the travel bug, and we really wanted to experience life in a different culture, in a different part of the world. And this was in the spring of 1999. So we were looking to make a major life change, like many of you are who are attending today. With as many of you looking to retire in Belize, it's going to be a pretty major change for you. And we started to do what you're probably doing now, is we started to look at various places around the world where we thought rather, would make us happy. And so I came up with a short list of criteria that was important to me. My wife had her own list, but these are the 5 things that I was most interested in as we looked for a country anywhere in the world to move to. First of all, I decided that it would be a 1-year trial period. So in July 2003, I said I'm going to move somewhere for 1 year. And based on that 1-year relocation, I wanted the country to be English speaking because I didn't speak any other languages at the time. So I wanted to be able to land in the country, be able to get along fine in the community, be able to communicate just fine with everybody and anybody. So it had to be English speaking. And I found out very quickly that there are very few English-speaking countries in the world. There's Guyana in South America. There's Belize in Central America, a few Caribbean islands. But a lot of the Asian countries and countries in Europe just don't speak English, or if they do, their English is limited. I also wanted it to be close to the U.S. because my first time living abroad, I didn't know how nervous or scared I would be as far as, getting homesick, or would I need to run back often to the States for weddings, or, maybe an emergency in the family or something like that. So I wanted it to be close to the U.S. But I really wanted to experience a different culture. So I didn't want to just move states. I wanted to move to a complete different country, and I wanted that country to be safe and comfortable. So after researching the world, my wife came up to me one day and slammed down a packet of papers in front of me and said, "Perfect, I found us the perfect place to move. We are going to Belize." And I asked the question, where the heck is Belize? Because I had never heard of it before. And she said, "Oh, it's in Central America. It's this and it's that." And I said, "Wow, wait. I was like, there's no way I'm moving to Central America. All I had is these visions of Che Guevara, roaming around in the jungle in camouflage with bulletproof bullets strapped across his chest and machine guns. I had this perception of Central America as being this very dangerous, hostile place, especially for Americans. And today, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking to you about the safety in Belize because it's a question that you've all brought up and you're concerned about. So I'm going to address this. But when I got to Belize back in July of 2003, I realized just what a safe and secure country it was then, and it continues to be today. And to prove it to you, I'm going to dive deep into the numbers, the statistics, the records, all accurate and truthful information as it's being presented today. So, what is the deal with Belize and why do we choose it? Well, just very simply, it met all of my criteria. English is the official language of the country of Belize. So that means that anyone can move down and communicate freely and openly. But more importantly, this also means that the contracts or legal documents that you might be looking at getting involved in, for example, if you're a retiree and you're looking to buy and own your own property, maybe you want a condo or a home or a piece of vacant land, all of those agreements and legal documents will be in English. Your medical care is all in English. This is important because if you go see a doctor, or more importantly, if you have an emergency and you need surgery or an operation or something life-threatening is happening, you can communicate freely and openly with all doctors and nurses and surgeons and anesthesiologists in English. And then, as a nice bonus, the newspapers, websites, social media, things like that are in English as well. So for many of my clients looking to retire in Belize, this is a very key important fact for them. So keep that in mind. Also, we found that the Belize the medical care in Belize is very, very good. They have excellent doctors. They have excellent hospitals, especially in Belize City with Belize Medical Associates, Belize Healthcare Partners. I won't go too much into detail on those, but just suffice it to say that they have very, very good medical care in Belize. And important to me, as I began to research the country more in depth, was the stability and the security of the Belize government itself. It's a democratic government, it's a two-party system, and it is the only government in Central America that has not had an uprising or a coup or anything like that. No civil wars have ever taken place in Belize, and Belizeans take their democracy very seriously. Voter turnout is at about 95%, and for all the people that say, oh, Belize is corrupt, you know what? Show me a government on earth that is not corrupt. I think it's very disingenuous for one nation to call another nation corrupt. When you go to Belize, you talk to the local people, you talk to the expats living there, you find that they are treated very fairly in Belize, that Belize is doing an excellent job at running its country on many levels. And of course, it's not perfect, never will be, but you'll find that overall, the stability in Belize is providing an excellent opportunity for investors, for retirees, and we're going to go into that in a lot more depth as we go through some of the numbers in this webinar. It had the proximity that I was looking for. It had the easy access to the United States and Canada. Also, it's pretty easy to get to Belize from Europe. You can connect through Miami or through Panama, easy to get to from other parts of the world. And this is especially important if you are looking at owning and operating a business in North America while living in Belize. So you'll be on the same time zone, the same schedule as your clients, people in your office, things like that. So for all those reasons, including this last one, secure property ownership, we knew that we wanted to start to invest in the country of Belize. This was important to me that the land, the titling, the legal system as it relates to real estate was all solid and secure. That's what we found out, and that enabled us, our family members, and others of our friends to invest in Belize real estate. So for all these reasons, we ended up choosing Belize. Now, first of all, we moved to the mainland. So Belize is composed of two different components. And the reason I make this clear distinction and clarify this is because I had a lady post on one of my Facebook posts that Belize is not a tropical island country. Belize is part of Central America. Yes, it is part of Central America. However, Belize is comprised of two different components. You have a mainland component, which is bordered by Mexico to the north, Guatemala to the west, Honduras to the south, and then you have hundreds of islands, island atolls off its coast in the Caribbean Sea. So some of the major islands that belong to Belize are Ambergris Caye, population of 25,000. It is absolutely a tropical Caribbean paradise. So is Caye Caulker, the second largest island. And then you have a lot of other islands that are populated to a much lesser degree, like Tobacco Creek Caye, St. George's Caye. You have a lot of other islands in various stages of development, such as Caye Chapel, Blackador Caye, which is Leonardo DiCaprio's island, and so forth. So you have these two different components, and there are pros and cons to living in the different areas. For example, on the mainland, and I'm going to briefly go through some options of where you might consider if you're looking at mainland life. First of all, you have the lower cost of living. So your rent's cheap, property's cheaper, you have your lower food cost, lower utility cost. Basically, in almost every category, life on the mainland will be cheaper than life on the island. With the islands, they can be more expensive because everything has to be transported by barge to the islands. And also with island life, oftentimes you get more services, more amenities, property values are higher, taxes can be higher. So there is definitely a cost difference between the two. However, there is also a huge lifestyle difference. For example, by point number 2, personal safety can be an issue on the mainland. I'm going to talk in depth about where those areas are, things that you want to avoid and stay away from. However, on the mainland, you get to have your car and you can explore and get around. So if you like the idea of jumping in your car on a Saturday afternoon and driving to a different part of the country and doing something different, well, then you can do that on the mainland. You can't do that on the islands because they're quite small. We don't use cars there. We use golf carts. So that's something to consider. Number 4, it's not as easy to integrate into the community on the mainland. And here is why. The mainland has much less expat activity, and the expats that move to the mainland of Belize In my experience, like I say, I'm just talking in generalities here. In my experience, tend to be more isolated, not as social. They don't seem to care as much about doing things with others. They're looking for more of a laid back life. And you'll see if you visit the mainland, some of these different areas, the kind of people that are drawn to those areas tend to be less social. And like I said, this is just from my experience. Others could prove me wrong and point out, cases and stats that prove me otherwise. But this is what I see in my personal experience after living in Belize for over 11 years. Also, the lifestyle as an expat on the mainland might not be what you expect. And what I mean by that is it can feel very much like normal life very quickly to have a house, have a car, taking care of the yard a bit. But after that, there might not be a lot to fill your days, weeks, and months. It can get lonely. You're down there with nobody. You're away from family and friends and things that are familiar. So sure, you can make friends and do things with them, and I'm sure you will if you move to the mainland. But like I said, it just seems that those who move there tend to be quieter, more loners, more looking to fill their days with maybe some reading and things like that. But from what we find, some burn out very quickly and they end up going back to the United States. It's different when you consider the island life. And here's why. Well, first of all, let me just talk about a few popular mainland choices so I'm not being biased. There is Placencia in the south of the country. That's probably the second largest expat community in the country of Belize outside of Ambergris Caye. The reason Placencia is popular is because it's right in the sea. You still have access to snorkeling, diving, fishing off its coast, but you also have the benefit of being on the mainland, so you can own a car, you can drive to other parts of the country, and some people like that. So it's a quiet part of the country, even though it's popular with tourists and expats. But that would be a close running to Ambergris Caye. So if you're looking for a mainland option, definitely check out Placencia. The Cayo district, which is in the west on the border of Guatemala, that has a less it's a less popular area with expats. Still attracts some, not as many. It tends to be a little bit cooler there, especially in the summers, because it's more hilly, a little bit more mountainous. So the Cayo district has the benefit of being more jungly. Definitely, you can get more land for a lesser price. But Corozal Town, which is number 3 on my list, that's in the north. That's right across the border from Mexico. So if you talk to expats who live in Corozal, the reason they like it is because they can go into Mexico and go to Sam's Club, Costco, McDonald's. You have more shopping over there. So they get the benefit of living in Corozal, which is a much, much less cost of living, but also have the benefit of having a much larger city like Chetumal, Mexico, to be able to go to have some creature comforts and to get some things that they might not be able to get in Corozal. The place that we really found home is Ambergris Caye. So after living on the mainland for 2.5 years, we moved to Ambergris Caye, lived there for over 9 years. Absolutely love it. It had everything that we were looking for. And we just fell in love with the Caribbean lifestyle. So there was a lot more things to do, a lot more services and amenities. We felt more comfortable there. We were able to integrate into the community a lot easier. But there were some pros and cons, and I'll be honest with you as to what those are. Number one is I had a much higher cost of living. So your rent's higher, your property the cost to purchase property is much higher. Also, things like utilities are higher. And the reason being is on the mainland, most of the homes don't come with air conditioning. You might find cooler parts of the country where you don't need it. Whereas we found is that we like our air conditioning, especially at night. It helps us to sleep better. Some of those hot, humid nights, you kick on the AC, cool things down. Well, electricity can be very expensive on the island. Our electric bill, we had a washer and dryer in the house, hot water heat, and we ran our electricity quite high because we like it very cold in the house, and it could be as high as $450 US a month for electric. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wow, that's expensive. And it is expensive, but we also didn't have a car payment or car insurance. So we can, take those bills, minus those. Electricity bill is high, yes, but we didn't have other expenses. Your healthcare costs in Belize are much lower than they were for us in the US. Other things like cable, our cable was $20 a month. Internet was around $90 a month. So you compare those prices to North American prices, and you see it wasn't as high of cost of living as you might think. Also, we found it easier to integrate into the community, and overall, we found it a much, much safer place to live rather than the mainland, both in terms of personal safety and in terms of property security. So this really brings us up to the thrust, or the main focus and goal of this webinar is Belize safe? What is the crime situation in Belize? This has been asked by many of you, and I'm going to now dive into the details and statistics regarding what is going on, because some of you have probably heard that the U.S. State Department has issued travel advisories to the country of Belize. What is going on? How does that affect tourists? How does it affect expats, real estate investors, and so forth? So without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, as with anywhere in the world, you need to know the area that you're going to. I don't care if you are visiting New York City, Miami, Disney World in Orlando, if you're going to spend a week in Paris or in Shanghai, you need to know where you are going, where you are staying, and you need to be aware of your surroundings. This is no different in Belize. You need to do your research to know where you're going, what reputation the area has. You need to be aware. You also need to be aware of what types of crimes are being committed and who is affected, because that really ties in very closely with your personal safety. And I'm going to give you several examples here of that as we go through. And what we are finding in Belize, as with anywhere we've lived in the world, we've lived in several different countries now, that your lifestyle oftentimes determines your personal safety. Now, let me give you one example of that before we get into the numbers. I had a client come down to Belize who was a U.S. retiree. He got out of the services on disability. He was in his early 50s and he was retired. So he bought property on Ambergris Caye and he came down and started to rent an apartment there. Well, within very short order, we saw him hanging out in places where he should not have been hanging out, doing things with undesirable local characters who were obviously no good for him. We actually approached him and warned him about this on several occasions, saying, look, you are in with the wrong crowd. These are not good guys to be hanging out with. These areas that you are going on Ambergris Caye are not safe. And sure enough, after several weeks and over a month of telling us that he knows better, he knows how to handle himself, well, one night, 2 a.m, bunch of drunks, including himself, ended up robbing him and beating him up. Didn't cause any serious damage, but beat him up, and he blames Belize. So he called me up all disgruntled, blaming me, blaming Belize. It's a bad place. He can't stand it, selling his property, moving back to the States. After he had been warned several times, the lifestyle you're living is not conducive to your personal safety. So what I tell people coming down to Belize, if you're going to go anywhere in the country, use common sense. All right, be aware of your surroundings. Don't hang out at 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning at places that you know you shouldn't hang out, even if you were in North America. If you're living in Toronto or New York or Miami, you know better than to hang out in places where trouble often takes place. So don't come down to Belize and breathe in the salt air and the sunshine and everything else and think that because you're now on vacation or you're retiring there that you can let your guard down. Just don't be like that. And here's why. Let's go through some of these statistics. The United States Department just released this information just a few days ago, and this is what all the buzz is about. Okay, so you can see this on the OSAC website. They said the Belize district, which includes Belize City, continues to have the highest number of murders due in large part to dozens of street gangs that operate in the city. So when you look at the murder rate of the country of Belize, the majority by far take place in a very, very small part of the country called Belize City, and even in a small part of that city, the south side, where many of these gangs operate. So if you do not live or work or vacation in Belize City, and especially if you avoid the south side, you stand a much higher chance of not getting into any sort of trouble, especially if you're not involved in gang activity or doing illegal drugs or anything like that. Now, another area that we see in Belize that contributes to murders and fights and choppings, as they call them, is domestic violence. Most of the crimes committed in Belize tie back to domestic violence, either between husbands and wives, or more often than not, the husband or the wife is cheating. They have a couple girlfriends or boyfriends on the side. The husbands or wives get jealous. And what happens? Well, this jealousy rages up and they take their jealousy very seriously. So here, this is actually on the OSAC website. Domestic violent crimes are extremely high and account for a significant portion of the total murder rate. So, if you're not involved in gangs, drugs, or cheating on your wife or husband, or involved in domestic violence, then you really don't have a whole lot to worry about. Let's go on and prove this a little bit more. This is also on the website. There is no indication that foreigners are broadly targeted. Although, and it puts the caveat, although tourists can be easy targets when not displaying situational awareness. Well, duh, of course. If you're a tourist and you're wearing flashy jewelry, acting all careless, and again, being places you shouldn't be, and flaunting your wealth, what's going to happen if you do that in any city? All right, so just use some common sense. But here, they are admitting that there is no indication that foreigners are being targeted in these crimes in Belize. And that's significant because the question I'm getting from many of you is it safe for me as a foreigner, as an American, as a European to come to Belize? Again, this is right from the United States website. Another comment, violent crime has remained low in the tourist areas. The number one tourist area in the entire country of Belize is Ambergris Caye. It's the financial engine for the country. They work very hard to keep it safe. Violent crime on San Pedro has remained low, and violent crime is not a concern for expats, real estate investors, or tourists coming to the island. Now, why can we say that definitively? Again, take a look at some information. We need to break down the numbers. This is directly also from the U.S. State Department website. It says, due to the small population and high murder rate per capita, Belize consistently ranks among the top 10 cities in the world for homicides. All right, now if you just looked at that stat, you would be concerned. And I can see why, because it's a pretty scary stat. But look at what it's saying. It is saying that Belize has a high murder rate, all right, no argument with that, but it's lumping the entire country in with the activity that mainly happens in one small part of Belize City. So, which has nothing to do with the rest of the country. It's like making a broad statement regarding the high crime rate in Michigan if you're only looking at the crime in inner city Detroit. So they're giving these statistics, these generalizations for the entire country of Belize, not taking into account the significant differences in area and the distance between where the crime is taking place and where the tourists and the expats are living. And here's why. Let's go on to this next slide. Oh, that's a duplicate. Crime and safety. In San Pedro, in 2017, there were a total of 8 murders. All right? Population of 25,000, 8 murders. The same figure as was registered in 2015, 2016. So if you hear people say, oh, the crime rate in San Pedro, Ambergris Caye is increasing, these are the exact figures that are verifiable from the government of Belize website. Same number, has not gone up. 8 murders, 2015, 16, and 17. This number is only 5.5% of the total homicides in Belize, which were 144 in 2017. All right, so the government of the United States makes this broad statement, oh, it's dangerous to travel in Belize. Well, it's a broad statement that is inaccurate and disingenuous. 5.5% of the homicides have taken place in Ambergris Caye, where most of the tourists go and where most of the development is taking place. Obviously, the numbers are skewed. Now, we go on to our next point. Who were the 8 who were murdered in 2017 and what were the circumstances? All right, so I'm not going to comment on all of them. I'm not here to pass judgment, so please don't take my words and twist them or anything. But we all know that if we are involved in a certain lifestyle, there is a greater degree of likelihood that we are going to get in some type of trouble. All right, so when you look at the 8, what were some of the circumstances, and were these random events? Were these events targeted toward Americans, expats, tourists, or would there be another element to these homicides on Ambergris Caye? Well, here's 4 of them. First of all, one very sad case of extreme child abuse led to the death of a young girl. This was a young girl who was adopted by an American couple who were living on the island of Ambergris Caye. It was very, very highly publicized on the news. So if you've been following Belize for any length of time, a very, very sad case. So obviously that wasn't a target of an expat or of a tourist, an American, things like that. Another death on the island. The newspaper reported regarding this young man that he had had several run-ins with the law, was actually shot before by the police, was involved in drug trafficking, and himself had engaged in serious harm to others. All right, so unfortunately, he lost his life. In another homicide, the police report stated that they feel that this person's illegal activities had caught up with him. So we have this scenario playing around. In fact, when you Google it and you look up the 8 murders that happened last year, you're going to see a similar theme. And there was one German expat whose death remains unresolved. They were not able to find out who did it or why. And this was an expat who had lived in the island for about 5 years, was not an American, was a German attorney. And even there is some suspicion as to the reason for his death, where he was, the time of night he was out, where he was out. Like I said, I'm not making any sort of judgments here, but when you look at the 8 homicides that took place in Ambergris Caye last year, you're going to notice some sort of a pattern. I'll let it be up to you to figure out what that pattern is. And the outcry over these is high, as it should be, because any homicide is horrible, both for the person and the family. But the overall feeling of safety and security on the island also remains high, both in the expat community and with the local residents. And here is a direct quote from one of the local residents who lived in one of these areas where, unfortunately, a person was killed. They said, "We, the hardworking people of San Pedro, and all of the tourists walk through San Pedro town daily, and we are and feel safe since we are not involved in illegal stuff." All right, so that's the overall consensus of the expats and the local island residents. It's noteworthy that none of those who unfortunately were killed last year on Ambergris Caye were tourists or American expats. So again, the reason you're asking me this question as a webinar attendee today, is it safe for me to buy, invest, and live on Ambergris Caye? The answer is unequivocally yes, it is, for all the reasons I just stated. Also, let me just bring this out. When you are researching news relating to Ambergris Caye, sometimes the local newspapers and websites will report on crimes that have involved residents of Ambergris Caye, but crimes that would not have actually happened there. And so this is all kind of creating this buzz around what's going on, what's going on. Well, here are 2 prime examples. These are both the snips of the San Pedro Sun, the local newspaper's Facebook site, both on January 26th and January 30th, where two residents of San Pedro town were killed not on Ambergris Caye. One was murdered in Belize City, again, in some of those areas I warned you about, and one was killed on the mainland. So these did not happen on the island. Now, just for comparison's sake, let's compare Belize, Ambergris Caye, with other major portions of the United States and Canada. As an example, let's take a look at Chicago. Last year in 2017, Chicago recorded 650 murders, which was a drop from 771 murders in 2016, which was the deadliest year in nearly 2 decades. Okay, so get this straight here. Belize as a country had 144 murders. Most of those happened in a very small portion of Belize City. Chicago as a city had 650 murders. And when you look at the murder rates for other mid-sized cities in the United States, you find that their numbers are also very high, but those cities are also very popular with vacationers, tourists, expats. For example, you see West Palm Beach on there, Kansas City, Dayton, Ohio, Baton Rouge, other places, San Bernardino, California. And Chicago had 55 million visitors as tourists in 2017. So one of the highest murder rates in the country, the United States, is in Chicago, and yet 55 million people visit there because of either work or as tourists or go through the city. Why? Because Chicago itself is a relatively safe place, and we're going to show you why by looking at some maps. Here is a very unique map called the Chicago Homicide Map. These pinpoint all 650 murders that happened in Chicago in 2017. But you notice where my gray arrow points, there seems to be a large area where not much happened. And you can guess what this area is. It is the hub of the financial and tourist activity right downtown Chicago along the waterfront. You see that this area is relatively safe and secure and enjoyed by millions of tourists. Whereas outside of this area, this is where you have most of the murders taking place. All right, so it's going to be the same in Belize. I'm going to show you how in a minute. But first of all, let me ask you this question. If you were to look at investing in real estate in Chicago, or let's say you transferred there, you had a job offer, you needed to live in Chicago, where would you choose to live or where would you choose to invest? Well, when you look at a map like this, you see that there are pockets of high crime, high homicide rates. All right, I would definitely stay away from those areas. But then you have these areas in light blue, which are very safe, very welcoming, attractive, fun places to enjoy life, where you can live for decades without having any problems at all. Let's take a look at another comparison. Orlando, home to Disney World, the most happiest place on the face of the earth. This is a heat map of where most of the crime takes place in and around this area, and the darker the color means the higher percentage of all sorts of crimes, including rapes and murders and home invasions and burglaries and all sorts of things. And you can see that in Orlando Center, it has an extremely high crime rate, but then other areas surrounding it have a much lower crime rate. So obviously, you don't feel nervous taking your kids to Disney World because it's in Orlando, because you recognize that where you're going to be going and staying has nothing to do with those high crime rate, those areas that this map show. Another good example is this lower part of Los Angeles, California. You see that, where is it here? Inglewood, in the center of LA, has a very high crime rate, as well as other surrounding communities. But just to the north, just a few miles away, you find West Hollywood and Beverly Hills. Obviously, there's a big difference between visiting Beverly Hills and Hollywood and going in to the center of LA and getting involved in shady activities there. So the reason I'm showing you all of this is because this is how it appears to you when you research the country of Belize. You're looking at statistics, but you may not know the areas and nuances, just like Orlando, Miami, California, Chicago, things like this. So let me put things in perspective for you. Here is a Google Earth map showing Belize City on the lower left-hand side of your screen. So you see the arrow pointing to it there. Now, there again is where most of the crime happens. Stay away from Belize City. Don't go there for any reason. There's no need. Ambergris Caye is 31.7 miles away. It is an island, so you can't even drive there. So in some areas of the world, you might have a spillover effect. For instance, if you lived, let's say West Palm Beach, and you live in a good area, and maybe there's a bad area a half mile away or a mile away, well, you might have some concern because, as you drive through areas, you get gas at night, go to the store at night, criminals don't tend to just stay in one spot. They tend to rove around, right? Well, that's true if they have a car, but the criminal activity is not going to just go from Belize City to Ambergris Caye and rove around. First of all, it takes a flight to get there, Tropic Air or Maya Island Air, or you have to get there by water taxi, an hour and a half water taxi ride away, and there's just not the likelihood of them doing that. I'm going to explain to you why in a minute. Look at this picture. Regarding the crime in Belize, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Belize Police Department, and the San Pedro Town Council all met this week. This is a press release from this meeting, just came out yesterday, Wednesday, January 31st, and they are addressing the crime on the island that, again, hasn't gone up in 3 years. It's maintained the same, but still they're concerned about it for several reasons. Number one is that many tourists roll through the country, or roll through Ambergris Caye. It's a hot spot now more than ever, with the going into the Wyndham Resort, the Hilton Resorts. So now there's some major name brands attached to the island. So obviously safety and security is important for their guests, but all residents of the island. All right, so they're taking a look at that, and they have come up with a list of things to do. So you see it on this screen here, 1 through 6, but let me just draw your attention to number 6. The implementing of a boat passenger manifest at all ports of entry within the next 3 months. All right, so there's only 2 ways to get to Ambergris Caye. You take a flight, which most expats and tourists and vacationers fly to Ambergris Caye from the mainland through Tropic Air, Maya Island Air. These flights tend to be approximately $150 round trip. Most of your criminal element is not paying to fly to Ambergris Caye. Plus, if they do, there's a registration that they've flown, so their name is registered, obviously, on the manifest. But the boats that go back and forth, the water taxis, don't have the same rules or the same stipulations. You don't have to give your name, show ID. So what this would do by implementing a boat passenger manifest is have a record of those coming to and from Ambergris Caye from Belize City or other ports of call such as Corozal, Chetumal, things like this. So it means that those coming in and off the island are more closely watched. When this happened several years ago, we found that almost immediately we had a lot less undesirable people coming out to the island, and we saw the crime rate go down significantly. So I was very excited to see them doing this, and this should have a very good impact on the island. Now also, and finally, people tend to vote for any particular area with their pocketbook and time. What I'm saying is, if people thought the Ambergris Caye was unsafe, if they came to the island and didn't feel good, then obviously they're not going to come back again. They're not going to buy property. They're not going to invest in Belize. So do we see that happening? No, we see the opposite happening. We see the tourism stats for 2017 are at an all-time high. Belize is growing year over year over year in tourism and overnight arrivals. And then when we talk about tourism, we're not talking about necessarily cruise ship arrivals, because cruise ships tend to stop at even undesirable destinations because their people get off for a few hours. They're sort of handheld and corralled into certain areas, where to go, where not to go. Whereas the overnight visitor comes with a lot of freedom. They travel around to different parts of the country, and they spend a lot of time in the country, and they do not do this if they don't feel safe. Here are the latest overnight tourism stats. You can see the change from 2015, 2016, 2017, year over year. Almost every single month has a major increase. In fact, look at the 2016 to 2017 stats just for the months of November and December. We had a 22.7% increase in November, 21% increase in December over last year, same time. So again, people are voting. They feel very safe. Here's another example of that. This was just posted, I believe today, nope, yesterday, January 31st. If you'd like some information on Belize and on the island, go to San Pedro Scoop's website. She does a great job at portraying what island life is really about. She's an expat as well for the United States, and she really has a good time in the island. She enjoys a nice life there and talks about all sorts of things related to living on the island. And in this post, she talked about a couple that came down to the island with their children and what a beautiful experience they had while on the island. Ended up spending a total of 7 weeks there. And this is the comment I thought was very interesting. They said, "My wife and I have felt completely comfortable bringing our 1.5 and 3-year-old to every bar and restaurant we've been to." And what they said in another part of their blog post was that they really like to go to the out of the way, more local type establishments. So they weren't just hanging out at the touristy places, they were going to where the locals are. And again, there is nothing wrong with that, but I can guarantee you they weren't hanging out at 2 and 3 in the morning in those types of bars where illegal activity goes on. So again, they felt very safe. And if you talk to any expat who has spent any amount of time on the island, they would tell you the exact same thing. Now, I had a lot of information ready to present to you, but this I knew this was going to take up the bulk of the time today, because I think it's very important for you to understand what is going on in Belize and how it relates to your investments. If you've already purchased for investment reasons, or if you're looking to purchase, if you're looking to retire in Belize, vacation in Belize. So I really wanted to go through these numbers with you and give you the true scenario of what's going on. So if I would, let me just take a little pause here. I've been going at it for 46 minutes. What questions do you have for me regarding the information that I presented so far? Because I don't want to switch gears if you still have some questions or things that have come to your mind. So if you would, enter those questions in the question box on your screen, any question at all related to what we've talked about so far, and questions related to similar type things that are in the back of your mind that you're wondering about. So go ahead, do that. I'm going to grab a drink of water and clear my throat for a bit. All right, so looking through the questions here, we have a lot of people online. I try to cover it in as much detail as possible. But if anyone has specific questions regarding to crime, regarding to safety, security, and I'm seeing none come through despite dozens of people on. So maybe I covered it well. Tyson, thanks a lot. Says very good presentation. I appreciate that. Um, Anything else related that's in the back of your mind that you're worried about, that you're concerned about? A couple of you had asked me about the corruption in the government of Belize. Again, lived in Belize for 11 years, dealt with the government quite a bit. A lot of the expats that I personally know and are good friends of mine have also dealt with the government of Belize. A lot of them are property owners, developers. We have not been affected by any government corruption. But again, you can find bad eggs in any government, In fact, every morning I just pull up CNN briefly, the website, just to do a quick scan, and probably 30% of the news posts are related to some sort of scandal, corruption, lies, investigations in the United States and Canada. So I think it's pretty disingenuous for the United States to be calling another country corrupt, but hey, that's just me. So, any other questions? Tish, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Appreciate your comment. We have a question. Let's see if this is related. Is okay, not related to personal crime and safety, but is there a Lowe's or Home Depot? Actually, no, there's not. There's Benny's. Benny's is our Lowe's and Home Depot. Benny's is the #1 provider of construction materials in the country of Belize. They are located in Belize City, but more Belize City towards Ladyville, so not in that south side where I told you not to go. But you can get most everything you need from there. And you can also have building supplies imported. A lot of them, my clients who have homes built that want a special kind of tile or special kind of countertop or lighting or fixtures, they get their materials from Miami. Miami has a company called Hyde Shipping that ships containers to Belize City twice a week, and you can get materials there. But otherwise, yeah, go to Benny's. Benny's has a pretty good selection. Also, Ambergris Caye itself has a lot of construction supply stores. So one thing about that, since you brought it up, you can't import any wood products into the country of Belize. I don't know why you would anyway, because we have excellent hardwoods, rosewood, birchwoods, mahoganies, hardwood pines. So they protect that industry by not allowing you to import, for example, wood furniture or even wood homes. You can't get permits to bring in wood homes to the United States. If you have a log cabin type home, because again, they want to protect that industry in Belize. All right, very good. Well, if no other questions come in, and again, feel free to keep the questions coming in, but I'm going to spend the last few minutes. I'm just going to fast forward through some of my slides. We were going to talk about hurricanes. I guess I can talk about that briefly. First of all, don't worry about hurricanes in the island of Ambergris Caye, Belize. We have the barrier reef, which protects us against storm surge, and we build to protect against high winds. In fact, even the new Hilton property was built entirely out of hardwood, so it's not even a concrete construction, but they designed it in such a way to stand up to the high winds of a hurricane. Your odds of having a hurricane in Belize are also very low. So talking about this theme of personal safety and security, in Belize you have a 17% chance in any given year of getting hit by a hurricane. The odds in Florida are 68% chance, and your odds of getting a hurricane hitting on the east coast of the United States is 67% and 47% for the Gulf Coast. All right, so talk about hurricanes. Let me just kind of fast forward. I'm sorry if I'm a bit scattered, but there's a lot I wanted to talk to you about. But again, healthcare, island lifestyle. For those of you looking for the island lifestyle, go back and watch my webinar that I presented last week. I talked about all the different things there is to do on Ambergris Caye. That's why we attract so much of the tourist activity in the country: the day sailing, snorkeling, diving, fishing, golf carting, beach barbecue, music, hobbies. I'll just go through some of these pictures here. Hopefully they show up on your screen at least for a second or two on each. We have beach barbecues off in the sandbar. That's awesome. You can go sailing with Felicity Charters. Beautiful catamaran, take you out snorkeling, diving, fishing on the Great Barrier Reef. Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. It's still great to me, but it's the Mesoamerican Barrier Reef. Snorkeling at Holcham. Fishing. Fishing is great, both in the flats and deep sea. Mahi-mahi, wahoo, bonefish, tarpon. Great for fishermen there. Great for snorkelers and divers. There's a couple of pictures of the Blue Hole, Mexico Rocks, diving the walls, island lifestyle. My top favorite restaurants. Okay, if you're a foodie, don't miss these next time you visit the island. Blue Water Grill, Victoria House, Mambo's at Chica, Red Ginger, and Wild Mangoes. Again, if you want more information on that, go back and watch the webinar that I recorded, uploaded to YouTube last week. Let's see, my top favorite cheap eats on the island: Neri's, Tito's Barbecue. Excellent. We'll go through those. What irritates me? All right, why not? mosquitoes and no-see-ums. Sometimes, Susan, we do have mosquito issues, especially if there's been heavy rains. The no-see-ums can come out. They can come and go at any given time. I don't like bugs. Fortunately, in the island, we don't have issues with them very often. But for example, January was a very wet month. So I bet you in February, at least the beginning part of the month, we're going to have some mosquito issues. But once it dries out, that won't be a problem anymore. Limited product availability. We're getting more and more products available on the island, but when we first moved there back in 2007, there wasn't much available. Like I said, it's getting much better now, but still some things you just can't get. It's an island in the Caribbean. What are you going to do? What I loved, grand opening of Mahogany Bay Village. Okay, this sort of ties in with the whole crime and safety situation in the country as a whole because you have a major name branded property, the Hilton Curio Collection at Mahogany Bay Village, the largest resort in the country of Belize, located on Ambergris Caye. What we are finding out is that places like this are major brand names like the Wyndham Grand, the Hilton, other major brands that are looking at opening up hotels and resorts on the island do not want their names associated with dangerous places. Obviously, it's bad for business, it's bad for the reputation. So the fact that we're seeing these types of businesses come to the island is further proof of the safety and security there, both of their overnight guests, but also for people in general, because most of these places are built where there are no gates, there are no gated subdivisions, it's an open community, people can come and go as they please, and that just a little more information there for you. This is just a couple of pictures of Mahogany Bay Village. Beautiful property, which, by the way, if I can get to one of the particular slides, this is the beach club at Mahogany Bay Village. So this is on the west side, the Ambergris Bay side of the island. And just yesterday, DIY Network released a really cool show. It's about 45 minutes long regarding building off-grid. And this was so cool to me because it went through step by step how Mahogany Bay Village identified this particular piece of beachfront and built this really cool beach club, and how they had the materials barged in from the mainland, or what it took them to build using solar, using their water systems. And so, because I know many of you are looking at building off-grid yourselves on beachfront properties that you have purchased, or off-beach properties where there are no services or amenities yet, I think it'd be really cool for you to go to watch this. So if you would, email me and I will send you a link, because this show now has been uploaded to YouTube. So email me. You're going to see Ken Grissom and Beth, the CEO of Mahogany Bay Village, go through this. It's a really cool show, and I think you'll really like it. All right, so enough on that. A little bit on the Wyndham Grand. We covered this material, this information before, but again, just let me scroll through the pictures. Okay, Bravo Blue. Bravo Blue is under new ownership. They recently opened in the Costa del Sol area. And all right, let me just finish up with this. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. This week's webinar specials regarding safety and security. You know that I have always recommended that you buy in safe, secure, up and coming areas, and that you try to get the best deals that you can on real estate. Obviously, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. Same thing with stocks, bonds, mutual funds, anything like that. So here is a fourth row building lot that is going to be located just north of the Wyndham Grand property and just south of where the new international airport on Ambergris Caye will be going in. This is a fourth row oversized building lot. The price is $57,750, and I've been given authorization by the owner to sell it on my webinar for $10,000 off that price. So $47,750, and the seller will do some financing on it. So if you're interested in securing your own piece of vacant property to build a home on when you retire, I think this is an excellent piece of property in an excellent, safe, secure location. And the other deal I have to tell you about is in and around Secret Beach. Many of you know that I'm very bullish on this area. It's one of the most beautiful spots on the island. It already has several restaurants, bars, a boutique hotel, other things like that, nice private homes in the area. And there is one particular lot in this area. It's called parcel number 9008. It's a very large lot, 1.38 acres. And the unique thing about this lot is it can be subdivided. So if you wanted to have subdivided into 2 lots or 4 lots or at a maximum of 10 smaller lots and sold off individually, you can do that. And the reason it's such a good deal is because the price on it is 65,000 US with your closing costs and stamp tax, which would add 6,500 to it. Your total due at closing is 71,500, and I've been authorized to sell it for 5,000 off the purchase price only on this webinar. So for 60,000 US, you can get a very large 1.3 acre property that you can subdivide and then sell off the individual lots, or just maybe split it between you and a family friend or coworker or a family member, things like that. So excellent deal. Those are my 2 deals for the webinar today. Here is a view of exactly where the parcel is located. So you see Secret Beach there at the top of the screen, parcel 9008 highlighted in red at the bottom. All right, so any more questions for me today? There are some questions. Good. Let's just take a look. And I'm having a hard time. There we go. Okay. Hang on 1 second, people. My questions just weren't coming through, and now they are, so I can see them in their entirety. All right. So development in Stan Creek and Hopkins Village. All right. So again, Tyson, the mainland developments are a lot different than Ambergris Caye. When you look at Google Earth, and I encourage everybody to do this, if you think you're interested in something in a place like Stan Creek or Hopkins Village, Google Earth it and look at it. It's very, very isolated. For one, it's on the mainland. There's no real easy way to get there. For instance, you can fly into Belize City and then fly to Placencia. So Placencia is a good option because it's easy to get to. But some of these other areas, you need a car. And to drive from Belize City down to Hopkins or City Village or one of these areas in and around Stan Creek, it takes a long time. And there's just not a lot to do down there. And after visiting all of these places and spending considerable amount of time, I don't know about you, but I just get bored. That there's not many restaurants, there's not many things to do. So, do I think it's beautiful? Absolutely. I think you're going to find some very nice properties down in those areas, but I think you're going to find a lot of these areas just a little too Central American-ish, a little too rustic. And I know I'm going to have a lot of developers mad at me and real estate agents who sell down there, saying otherwise. That's fine. But again, clients vote with their pocketbook, and you will not find a lot of people buying properties in those areas. And if they do, sad to say that they might have get caught up in the hype and by the slick marketing practices of some who present a lot of crazy, wild ideas that don't actually come to fruition. They make promises that they might not be able to keep. And I just have had too many people buy properties down there that afterward come back to me and say, we made a mistake and now we're stuck. What do we do? And so if you're looking in those areas, go check it out yourself, but then spend a day or two without the developer. Don't let them hog tie you and keep you captive for 3 days. Because what they do is they'll have these fly and buy trips, and you'll go down and they'll put you up for 3 days, and they'll take you all around, but they never let you leave their site. They're always with you. All right. And they do this on purpose. So if you go down, take their little trip, listen to their spiel, check it out, but then spend 1 or 2 more days on your own. Drive around, see what's around there, get a real feel for what it's like to be on your own in these areas. And then if you still like it, well, then go ahead and cautiously purchase. But I think it might be a little different once you do that. So anyways, my 2 cents. Here's another question. Is there any specific business that Ambergris Caye does not have? Let me just do it. You think? All right. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get to your question in its entirety. Okay. I think the question is, I'm not seeing all of these in their entirety. But Kim has a question. Are there any businesses that Ambergris Caye does not have that I think would be good businesses. You know, Kim, that's changing for me all the time because I'm finding expats getting a little more creative. Before, I would say any sort of American eatery or anything that expats miss that they can't get. It used to be just plain old good burgers and fries. You know, where are you going to get a good burger and fry or rack of ribs? You know, Belizeans do very, very good at cooking the local food. So the chicken, the rice and beans, the higher end restaurants, cater to the tourists if you want to go for something fancy like the lobster and the filet mignon and whatnot. But just to get an everyday burger and fries, that was necessary. A good old pizza, good old, Pizza Hut style or Domino's style pizza. Those are good businesses to open. But more and more, I'm seeing expats open up different types. For instance, one guy opened up a kite surfing school. One guy rents out these little motorized wakeboards. I think anything that caters to both locals and expats is good. And normally it's food related, just because that seems to be what everybody needs on a daily basis. So I would say something like that. But here's the honest to God truth. If you think that you can move to Belize and open up a business that you've never ran before and that it will be successful and be able to support you and your family, look very seriously at that not working out. And here's why. In the United States, do you know how many small businesses fail each and every year? The percentage of failure is going to be much higher in Belize because in the United States, you can do your studies. You can open up a small business in a community. You know the community size, you know the demographics, you know the flow through, you can crunch the numbers. And if you fail even in the US and Canada, then there are too many unknowns in Belize, and that's going to make your failure rate even that much higher. So it's not to scare you, but just don't count on that business providing for your livelihood. Count it for providing some extra money, perhaps some lifestyle tips and tricks, but just don't count on it being successful right away. I have seen people become very successful in real estate, in property management companies, in travel related services, operating travel websites. But the most people I find that have become successful at moving to Belize are those that have a skill that translates to being able to be done online. So, a computer programmer, consultation work, website development, coding, things like that. So, any business that you can do on your computer, sitting in Belize and make US North American wages, those are the businesses that really, really do well. So, for instance, get yourself a skill, take classes, do whatever you got to do to get yourself a skill that you can make $25, $30, $35 an hour online, and then work 2 days a week from the comforts of your home, overlooking the reef, having your coffee, your sundowners at night. Do some sort of online business where you can make American wages living in Belize and you can be much more successful. So that would be my tip. Here's another question. Are all golf carts on the island gas or electric? They are gas. There are a few electric, but the island has gotten much bigger now in the sense that you can go a lot more places. And so they're almost all gas. And when I was driving up and down, back and forth, I probably spent about $20 a month in gas. So they're very, very economical. And as far as bringing your own, yeah, you can bring your own golf cart if you want. You will get charged import duty, probably 50% of the value. So you can do that if you want, or you can just simply buy a newer used one on the island. Very simple to do. We bought ours used, secondhand, and no problems at all with it. All right. So more questions. Here's a question. Will the vendor take any financing on the 1.3 acre parcel? No, not on that one. That is a cash deal only on that parcel. Some of the other properties that I highlighted, the vendor will take financing on, but on that 1.3 acre, no. They need the cash to take advantage of another investment on the island, and there is no financing available on that one. All right. Will the road be completed? Here's another question. Will the road be completed to the proposed international airport? Absolutely. That road is now not too far from there. And here is some good news for those of you who know that part of the island or know the history of that part of the island, is that there was a development called Sueño del Mar. I worked there, I own property there, spent a lot of time with this beautiful resort property, who unfortunately was affected by the crash of 2008. ended up going bankrupt and has sat now unused and kind of slowly deteriorating little bit by little bit over the months and years over the past several years. Very sad case. However, that property has recently been purchased by a group of investors. It is going to open up again soon under the name Ambergris Caye. And the reason that's so exciting is because the proposed site for the international airport is directly behind the Sueño del Mar property. And so this is going to now generate again a renewed interest not only in the resort property but also in the surrounding area, because I don't know if you remember, one of the things I often touch on in my webinars is people tend to buy properties where they vacation, especially on Ambergris Caye. And what I mean by that is if they stay, let's say, in the south of the island, they tend to look for properties to buy and invest in the south. It's where they're most familiar with. If they stay up north, maybe around the Wyndham Grand area, well, they tend to like to buy in that area. So what we found happening up at Sueño is that the overnight guests and owners who like that resort property tended to buy other properties in and around that same area. So what we're expecting to see once Ambergris Grand opens back up, once it becomes a nice beehive of activity for owners and tourists, that we're going to see another boom of activity up there. And again, that is extremely close to other subdivisions like Punta Azul, to the Tranquility Bay property, and to where the new international airport will be going in. So very, very excited for us. All right, very good, guys. Well, I appreciate you attending today. I've been going now for about an hour and 10 minutes. Thank you very much for all you've done for me. And what I mean by that is many of you have been corresponding with me over the past 7 or 8 days, giving me your questions that you wanted to see answered. So I appreciate you giving me that feedback. And hopefully today I've shed some light on some things that maybe were a bit concerning or confusing to you. And I hope you feel comfortable and secure enough to follow through with your investments in Belize and to realize that Ambergris Caye is an absolutely beautiful place to live, safe, secure, and it's just an island paradise. So come on down. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. We appreciate you attending. And again, email me after this webinar your level of interest in the properties that I've highlighted today. Like I said, these are actual webinar specials. So those prices are real list prices and the discounts are real. I'm not making these numbers up. And the reason I can do this is because if I sell them to one of my webinar attendees today, I get to save on broker commission splits with other agents, other brokers. I get to save on advertising fees and a host of other things. So I can pass along a portion of that to you, but also the sellers have agreed to offer you a discount too, because they know the value of my webinars, the information I present, and they like to work with me on their sales. So thank you very much, guys. Take care. Have a great rest of your day and talk to you soon. Cheers.